Several years ago, we featured the then new Volkswagen Atlas, the largest passenger vehicle the company had ever made. And in that time, they've come out with a tiny facelift and this new model that is technically a separate nameplate under the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. Now we're going to be talking about this 2021. This is an Execline with the R-Line package and kind of explaining how this differs from that 2019 that we drove, why you might be considering this one, and everything that you need to know about it. Now, first of all, this is a two-row crossover. Unlike the Atlas that we drove before that had 2 passengers up front, 2 in the middle with captain's chairs, and then 3 in the back, this one shaves off the back end, giving you less trunk space, but also removing that third row, which means the second row is a 3-passenger bench seat. There are a couple differences. This Cross Sport is about 40 kilograms lighter than the regular Atlas. It's about 70 millimeters shorter, 12 millimeters wider, and it's about 500 pounds less total cargo capacity. Now you do get more legroom for both front and second row, but you lose out on headroom for both of those. You also lose out on about 1,200 liters of passenger volume on the inside, and makes sense. Obviously there isn't a third row, so that doesn't get counted anymore, but there's less space for this. So this could be a good option if you wanted a large SUV crossover from Volkswagen. You didn't need the third row. Maybe you only had 4 or 5 people in your family, and that one was just a little bit too big for you. This is an option for you. Pricing is also a little bit less, which is nice to see. Usually with these Coupé-style vehicles, they charge more. Any manufacturer will, because it's sort of an upgrade. But in this case, $1,300 less for this Cross Sport, which is nice. But you do lose out on 2 features from what I can tell. If you look on their configuration site for Volkswagen, you don't have home link with this, where you would on the regular Atlas. And you have 2 fewer USB ports. Now this uses the same 3.6 liter VR6 engine found in the 2019 that we drove. It's good for 276 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque, and this uses an 8-speed Tiptronic transmission. Now there are some other changes about this vehicle. Volkswagen is coming out with their IQ as a sub-brand for some of the features on this vehicle. The headlights, which are slightly different from 2019, are now featured as IQ headlights. And on the inside, when you go into the enhanced safety tech, it's now using that same IQ branding for traffic sign recognition, forward collision and active cruise control, lane keep assist, and blind spot monitoring. A lot of manufacturers are doing it, so just keep that in mind, that is what Volkswagen has decided to go with. Now, a big change from the 2019 that we drove, we have the R-Line package like we did before. It no longer deletes the 360-degree camera. So we've got a camera on the front, 2 mirrors, and then 1 on the back. So that's a nice thing to have. I don't really know why I deleted it for the 2019, but it is on this one. And they've also changed some of the things that we had some small complaints about. Interior lighting on this is now LED. However, we no longer have fog lights, so you lose out on that. And 2 other changes on the inside were things that we really do like to see. We now have wireless Apple CarPlay. Volkswagen says it's using their updated infotainment system, even though the screen size is the same. A couple other small design changes over this, aside from the obvious back end. I mean, that's completely different from the one that we drove before, but Volkswagen has done, as I mentioned, a slight update with this. Aside from the headlights, the front end looks just a little bit different. They're using their new flat design language for their badging. It's no longer their 3D Volkswagen logo. It's much more flat, and Volkswagen has also etched their name on the B-pillars for the door trim. So we're going to take it on the road now. We're going to take it and see how this vehicle performs, drives, handles, and everything else about it, so that if you are in the market for about a $55,000 crossover, you'll be better informed and figure out if this might be the next one for you. As is tradition here on Test Drive, let's get the fuel economy out of the way first. This vehicle did our 100-kilometer test loop in 10.4 liters per 100 kilometers. That was in eco mode on dry, decent pavement. Now we do have winter tires on here, but I would like to point out that when we tested this vehicle about 2 years ago, when we did the regular Atlas, it did it in 11 liters per 100 kilometers. So this was more efficient. And it makes sense. It's a lighter vehicle. It's slightly shorter profile from the height, so maybe it's a little bit more aerodynamic. And the road conditions could have also been different too when we first did our road test. So a couple of things to note when it comes to that. Aside from that, though, it really is similar in a lot of ways to what we drove, but updated in ways that we actually were complaining about back in 2019 or 2018 for the 2019 model year. The point is they've made some changes, which is really good. A number of the exterior design elements, as far as I'm concerned, are much better. Aside from the fact that the front end has changed, looks a lot more like Volkswagen's R line of vehicles. If you look back to the Volkswagen Golf R that we drove, it does have a much more similar front end compared to what we drove before. The design of it follows what their R vehicles do. And in Europe, where Volkswagen sells other vehicles than the Golf R under their R name, it makes more sense. So this looks good. I like it. They've gotten rid of the fog lights, although there is sort of a rough weather mode. I'm sure somebody was going to bring it up. When you pull it out, essentially turns on like the cornering lamps as well as your headlights, so you have a little bit of extra illumination, but they're not really fog lights. Out back changes as well. They've changed the design of the taillights, and I think they could have incorporated their new R logo into the taillights. It's almost there. Very similar look to the daytime running lights, but they're not quite there. So I think that would have been a nice little touch. Put the R in the back of there, make it look really cool. But the back end's changed. We've got some huge fake exhaust ports. I mean, it's one thing when a manufacturer puts fake exhausts. Yeah, it's a small exhaust, and then they have these huge bezels that go around it. But in this case, I mean, they're just straight up fake. They've covered them up, and the actual exhausts are underneath the vehicle. I don't know. I mean, again, they're making the vehicle look like there are cars, and this is not, you know, it's not one of them. So whatever. That's a small thing. I noticed it immediately when I looked at the back end of it, but it's a small feature. I don't think anybody's going to be too upset about it. The interior is where we got some big changes. I mean, I like the way that this one is set up with the dark burgundy kind of interior here with the black trim throughout. I think it looks good. They've made some updates. We complained about the LED interior lighting. That's been updated. Then we have a different steering wheel here with Volkswagen's new logo, and everything's there. We've got the heated steering wheel options, 3 levels for that, heated and ventilated front seats. Only dual zone climate though. The third zone is gone. Volkswagen took that out of this model, so if you buy the regular Atlas, you should still have it, but this one does not have it. But one of the complaints that we had when we drove it before was you lose out on power folding mirrors and the 360 camera if you went with the R design. Not on this one. We have it also. Good stuff there. I mean, this is kind of what you would want out of a large vehicle. It's in the midsize segment. It's only 2 rows, but you can fit 5 people in it. I think it's plenty for a regular size family. I mean, for me, it's a little bigger than I would normally like. It's just the 3 of us, so we've got a ton of space in here, and without that 3rd row, the trunk is good. It's very usable. It's not a lot that really competes in this segment, though, because yeah, you do lose out on the ability to have that 3rd row with this specific vehicle. And I mean, there's only a few mid-size crossovers that you can buy with just 2 rows. So it's going to be a product for people that don't need that much passenger space, but still want a good amount of cargo space. They want a decent ride and everything they would want out of a larger feeling crossover in a Volkswagen product. Now, I mentioned this one does have the VR6 engine in it. The 2-liter turbo produces pretty similar power numbers. So you'd be going with this one if you wanted to tow, or you just like the idea of having a V6. But you have the option there for all the different trims sold here in Canada. And it's the way the industry is moving. We're going to smaller engines, less displacement, less cylinders. That's the future. So with this one, you still have the VR6, at least for now. But I think the reason why Volkswagen has made the engine power numbers so similar is they want to say to people, listen, yeah, this VR6, we're not going to have it for too much longer, so you should start to get ready for it. Here's the 2-liter. But I find that, yeah, you get up to speed well enough. Passing people, it's a little slow. This is a pretty heavy vehicle still, even without the 3rd row in it. And when you need to pass somebody, even in sport mode, both the transmission and the engine in sport mode, it still is, it's a little painful. So it's not the fastest out there, but again, the vehicle is meant for hauling your family, and it does it pretty well. We didn't really have that many complaints about it when we drove it before. It was just small, you know, like attention to detail things and, you know, cheapening out some of the parts of the vehicle. Those have more or less been addressed with this, which has been really nice, and I like it. I still think that the Hyundai or Kia products, the Kia Telluride, Hyundai Palisade, offer more to customers. You get a little bit more features. The design's really nice on it. There's a lot to like about those crossovers, and I still think that that's your best bang for your buck. But after driving this, now that they've made some improvements to it, I feel that this is a little bit easier to recommend to people than it was before. The comfort's good, the interior is good, road noise is pretty decent as well. I mean, overall, it's a solid vehicle, and we liked it back in 2019. So they've made some improvements. The price is a little bit less, although you do lose features over the regular Atlas, so you do save a little bit there, and it depends on what you're going for out of a vehicle. I mean, ours is fully loaded. This is the Execline sold here in Canada with the R-Line package, so you're going to be spending a little bit more to get all of those features, but I'm pretty impressed with it. I like it. It works. I think that this would be the one that I would take as well. It's got a good profile to it. The name, I don't know about the Cross Sport. I would probably have come up with a different name, but for the most part, it works. If you're in the market for a larger vehicle, you need something that only fits 5 people in it, but you want to have the space, whether it's for putting things in the back or you just like having a bigger vehicle, then I would say it's time to finally consider the Atlas. They've made the improvements that were needed. So good job, Volkswagen. I like this one.